When you go to a virtual networking meeting, you may be asked to put information in the chat box. And that is what I want to talk about in this week's video, because I find that many women entrepreneurs are either not prepared to do that, not really sure what to put in there, and then they don't know what to do with the chat box once it's over. If we haven't met, I'm Jill Celeste. I'm the founder of Virtual Networkers, one of the first virtual networking organizations for women entrepreneurs. And I've been looking at chat box transcripts for many years since I started Virtual Networkers in 2018. And I have some tips I want to share with you. Now, when you go to a virtual networking meeting, you may have the organizer send you something like a Google document or a Google form for you to complete in advance so that they have a roster that can be shared with the participants. And so if you get that opportunity, be sure to fill that out. What I'm talking about is actually the chat box, which is a functionality available on Zoom. And every organization I've ever been to has invited participants to put information in the chat box. I know at Virtual Networkers, this is a vital part of our networking meeting, and I want to make sure that you are prepared because we can't exchange business cards in virtual networking. So our chat box is sort of that substitute for the business card. So if you're going to do virtual networking, here's what I recommend. Before you even step foot into the Zoom room, I want you to fire up Word or Google Doc or Trello or whatever you might use to gather information. And I want you to write out in advance what you want to include in the chat box. So this could be your name. This could maybe where you live, your email address, a website, maybe your link to your coffee chats, your LinkedIn profile, whatever you feel is appropriate to put in there. Go ahead and type it all out, have the links there. And that way, when it's time for you to put your information to the chat box, you will have it in a document that you can just quickly copy and paste from. Now, I have this, mine is actually saved to my desktop. And that way, my desktop's not too cluttered, so I can find it very quickly, and I can go ahead and get that information over into the chat box. You also might want to have information there about something you're promoting. So if you have a webinar coming up or an event or your book's coming out, include information about that as well. Because what's supposed to happen, and brings me to the second part of this message, is that when the meeting is done, please be sure to go back and consult the chat box. Now, in Virtual Networkers, we do take that extra step and we send the chat box transcript with the hyperlinks all activated to everyone who was at that meeting. Not all organizations do that. In fact, I find that most do not. But however you receive the chat box, whether you save it on your own or you receive it from the organizer, take a few minutes and go through the chat box. Just like if you were an in-person meeting and maybe when you got home, you'd go through the business cards or you go through your phone to see what contact information you might have picked up, your transcript from the chat box works in the same way. So be sure you're going through it. And here's the other thing. Now, I'm a law of attraction person, and I know many of you are as well. And if you're putting an ask in the chat box and you want people to act on something, then you need to do the same for the other participants, right? That's the like attracts like. So go through there. I find that most of the asks in the chat box are very quick, things like subscribing to a YouTube channel or subscribing to a newsletter. Now, if it doesn't speak to you, of course, don't do it, but read through it. Go through it and just skim through it and make sure that you're connecting. Maybe there's a LinkedIn connection you can make or schedule a coffee chat, but go through and make sure you're adding that information into your to-do list for that day. It doesn't take as long as you think because especially at most meetings, a lot of the information is at the top of the transcript. Now, one thing I do want to add, don't be tacky. Don't be adding people's email addresses into your email list unless they've opted in. Don't do that, okay? But you can email them and say, it was great to see you at this meeting. If you'd like to get my newsletter, here's where you can subscribe. That's okay. But don't automatically add folks to your email list, okay? So those are some tips for the chat box. Please be sure to make this an important part of your networking experience. Maybe even put some time on your calendar so that you can review that chat box and also prepare for the chat box and what you're going to put in it. Okay. And if you want to perfect this chat box, we got it down here in Virtual Networkers. Come check us out at virtualnetworkers.biz. We have 5 chapters, more than 80 members from 11 countries. We are ready to welcome you and to see what you put in the chat box. So with that, I wish you a wonderful and beautiful day. Take care. I'll see you soon.